Hi, I'm Tom Eschen, and welcome to the award-winning Power in Politics podcast. Today, we are here from the New York State Capitol on the heels of women testifying before a Senate Codes Committee, women who say that they were victims and now survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring. They tell their stories, some of which for the first time, and do that in an effort of advocating for legislation in New York State, as they say the federal government hasn't helped them at all. So this is one of the steps that they're taking to find justice, not just for themselves, but also for others in the future as well. So here you're going to hear from one of those survivors at that, along with their attorney in this Power in Politics podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts.
So we're here in the state capitol today following the testimony by survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, and impactful at that. We're with Lara, we're also with Karini and Jordan Merson that was representing them in all of this. Thank you all. Appreciate you taking the time to speak to me after the testimony today. Means so much. I guess we'll start here is just why, what brought you here to New York and all the state capitol?
Silence is not, we can't afford to be silenced any longer, and I want to help whatever I can do to help to bring eventually the end of statutes of limitations for rape. It only protects the perpetrator.
Yeah. When you were formulating what you wanted to say, what goes through your mind? What's the message that you think you want people to hear?
The message is that, for years I lived in shame so long, for over 20 years, and when I spoke, it really took that shame away. And that's the message that I want for other survivors that have been through similar situations that I have. The shame is not for you to hold.
You were asked about why it took long in terms of what some people might call that, right?
Yes.
Probably, did that feel like it took a while to come forward for you, that 20-year period?
So, yeah, I lived looking over my shoulder. I lived in fear. There was a lot of manipulation and blackmailing with my story, and I was afraid. I was afraid to go to authorities. I was afraid to tell my parents because I was protecting him, and I took in all that shame. And when I let that go, it really was really is beneficial for not just me, but for other survivors.
What made you decide to come forward?
Seeing in September in D.C., there was some of my other survivor sisters were doing a press conference at the Capitol, and I recognized some of them that I had modeled with in New York City, and I felt like I had to be there, and I could not remain silent. It was not a thing anymore. I couldn't remain silent. I had to do something about it.
Jordan, as you've continued your work here, how do you what is your role, should I say, in trying to find justice for these people?
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to answer with. My role is to find justice for survivors of Jeffrey Epstein who have not had an opportunity to get justice. And unfortunately, the Epstein estate and others have argued that because these incidents happened a long time ago, that the statute of limitations has expired. And as it was said during the hearing, it's quite unfair that the survivors, they live with this for the rest of their lives, and the perpetrator can get away with it because there's a limitation period. In New York, before 2013, an adult who was sexually abused had 1 year to come forward. 1 year. So that's obviously completely inadequate, and I think while we've heard a lot of politicians talk about how terrible Epstein's crimes were, very few are actually willing to act on it. So we're hoping that New York has an opportunity to be a leader on this issue, and we're hoping they take that opportunity.
Legally, how do you find a sort of a mechanism there for statute of limitations? Obviously, there's a reason it's there. How do you whittle away at some of the opposition you might get to remove it that?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness, right? Like you heard repeatedly during the hearing that it takes these women a very long time to come forward. You have to understand, they were vulnerable young women and children. And for a child to speak up against Jeffrey Epstein, who was friends with world leaders, who had at the time unlimited power and resource, they didn't have a chance. And now they have a chance, and now they have a voice. And so we're hoping that the New York State Legislature realizes and appreciates it and passes this important law.
Senator Cooney brought up the notion of power. What does that mean to you?
I think right now, by speaking, our voice is power. And it really is, especially together. We are so strong together. We're so strong together, and we really want to see change. People ask all the time, well, what do you want to see out of this? We want change. We want investigations. We want some change that we can actually see.
I asked it in there. I'll ask it out here too. I think it was Karini who actually mentioned sort of the federal government isn't helping. You know, and,
doesn't feel like it.
And for I think Karini mentioned it's the statute of limitations makes her story worthless. I believe is where you said. You know, what gaps are they? Why aren't they helping? You know, what's missing from their standpoint right now?
Why aren't they? What's
missing?
Why is the federal government not helping?
Yeah. Why do you see them as not helping? What aren't they helping?
I think that they haven't helped for years. As we were talking about Maria Farmer in 1996, I don't know why they're not helping. There's obviously a cover up. He was a very powerful man and very wealthy and had all these connections. So I think he was protected on so many different levels. And this current administration is not helping as well.
Is that frustrating? Is it
it's
maddening?
It's very frustrating, and I feel like I still have hope. I think I hold on to hope because I know that justice sometimes is slow, but I feel that we'll all get justice at some point.
Do you feel like you've made progress?
Yes.
Yeah? How so?
I have. I feel like we have made progress. I think it's small, little baby steps, but we're making progress by speaking because we're not going away.
What about your story should people know?
You know, I was in the modeling industry for many years, and I was groomed into believing that he was going to help me. This was an individual that was really going to help me, that cared about me, and I believed that. And he took my past abuse and my past vulnerabilities, and he used that. He promised me a Victoria's Secret contract because he was very good friends with Les Wexner, the owner at the time of Victoria's Secret, and I believed him, and that never happened. One of the things that he did was recorded everything in his home. He had peephole cameras. And the first time he abused me, raped me, he said, now I have footage of your casting to show Wexner. And I'll never forget that. And so all of our stories are different. And I wasn't a minor. I was a very young woman. I was 20. But what they do have in common is manipulation, grooming, and intimidation.
Yeah, that's where you hear that's talked about coming forward, right? And that carries over, I'd imagine, just that feeling.
Yes.
Even if he might be gone, right, or from your life, or you were able to move on from it, I'd imagine that hangs over you.
I was eventually able to move on, but not really. I moved to California in 2003. And I was still looking over my shoulders, worried about if he's looking for me, if he knows where I am, is he angry with me? And I lived like that until I came out in November of last year.
And how did that change?
It's empowering.
Yeah.
It's really empowering to use my voice and to help other people.
The Adult Survivors Act here in New York, what did that do? And obviously that was a one-time, like you mentioned before, you know, the original, you know, in the statutes itself, but the Adult Survivors Act, you were able to look back.
Yep.
What is your perception of how that has made a difference in all this conversation?
Well, I think it has. I think it helped more survivors come forward, but every survivor, and you heard a number of different stories, has their own timeline. And for people to be intimidated and fearful of coming forward and, you know, having to hear other people, it helped. I think it was a step in the right direction, but it didn't do enough because we have all these clients who are victims of Jeffrey Epstein and who are victims of other perpetrators who have not come forward. So I don't think the work of the state legislature is done. And, you know, to let Jeffrey Epstein get away with sexually abusing these young women and children and have no recourse whatsoever is a disgrace. And the fact that no one will step up to help, we're hoping that the New York State government will.
This legislation itself today, what about it do you think is going to help?
Well, it would open the statute of limitations. It would create a statute of limitations, what we call window, but it means someone like Karini, you know, an incident happened, the incidents happened, you know, in the early 2000s. So for someone like her, it gives her an opportunity to get accountability and justice. And look, no one is saying, like, the Epstein estate has never said this didn't happen to you. They're just saying it happened too long ago. So how is that justice?
What will, if this is passed, what's next that after the fact? Is it trying to go farther, I guess I'd imagine, in terms of the legislation and looking at where things are right now?
I mean, right now we're looking at what's directly in front of us, which is to try to help these women and survivors of Jeffrey Epstein who are having a very difficult time getting recourse. So, whether this resolves the problem entirely or more legislation is needed is just what we're going to see, what is needed at the time. But you still have people who are denying accountability and responsibility. I mean, you brought up the federal government. The FBI in 1996 knew that Epstein was doing this. And there were reports by Maria Farmer of child pornography. And the FBI did nothing with that. And survivors of Larry Nassar came forward, and the FBI received a tip, didn't act on it, and compensated all those women. How is that different than here? Why are they denying accountability and responsibility for the Epstein case, but they would accept it on the Larry Nassar case? So, and we haven't gotten an answer to that. We've asked them repeatedly, like, what's different about this case? Why are you throwing all these legal technicalities at these women who clearly deserve justice? And they won't answer.
I want to ask about perception, because I think you hear a lot in the news, you hear a lot of the people talking heads talk about the Epstein files and everything like that. How do you feel about, we people talk about the Epstein files and all of that? Like, what goes through your mind when you hear that, and what should people be talking about when it comes to that conversation?
Well, I think there's a lot of misinformation in general, especially online. So half of the Epstein's files have been released. I know personally that there's videos and photos of me and my other survivor sisters that have not been released. And so when we passed the Epstein Transparency Act, it meant to release everything, not half of it, and that still has not been released. And the other thing that we'd like to see is right now, currently, there's only one person held accountable, and which is a woman that's in federal prison. And I personally would like to see men arrested, and because that we were trafficked to, and see perp walks.
Yeah. In terms of how you look at that perception of, seeing perp walks is one thing, and making that accountability go an extra step. Maybe for the Justice Department saying, "Is this case closed? Can you open it up?"
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I can get into every issue I have with the Justice Department on this issue, because they released all these files and they redacted the names of the bad guys and disclosed the names of the victims. So what is the explanation of that? I don't have an answer to that either, and I've asked those questions. But look, I think the release of the Epstein files partially is a step in the right direction, but it's clearly not enough. I think this isn't an issue that's going away, no matter how much some people want it to go away. And I think today was another important step in these women trying to finally get justice.
The full release, like you mentioned, if you're in there, that's okay, with you, even if there's videos, pictures of you involved, or...
We want everything released. Yeah. Obviously, the victims protected and redacted,
sure, yeah.
And I feel like the ones that weren't redacted is a form of intimidation against us that is continuing even after Mr. Epstein is still not here.
Finally, and I think there's something else that was said during the hearing, is the men. As there was a lot of men at that table, there was a few women.
Yes.
The men stepping up and allowing your voices heard. What's that mean to you, in terms of this conversation?
Listen, it's so important for men to speak up, and if you can't do it for us, do it for your mother, your children, your sisters, because when men are silenced, it speaks volumes, and I think that it's not helping our case, and we'd love to see the support, and it helps us. It means so much.
Thanks for listening. Hit the subscribe button right now so you can stay up to date on these news-making conversations about the issues impacting New Yorkers the most: power and politics.